MGTOW is non-conformity. This is Angel Michael and welcome to my channel. Today I will be talking about what is MGTOW and giving my definition of MGTOW. I am also a Christian, so my religious beliefs also play a part in defining what MGTOW is to me. There are lots and lots of MGTOW stations on YouTube and many blogs online, and most are from anti-religious people. I've come across a few good ones that have articles or videos from a Christian perspective. According to my basic understanding of what most men who consider themselves to be MGTOW, the general ideology is that men should have the right of self-determination. The Merriam-Webster definition of self-determination is the free choice of one's own acts without external compulsion. This definition, as it refers to men and men's own self-actualization in simplest terms, is the right of men to live their own lives without being told by society or women or the government what to do with their life. To me, MGTOW is nonconformity. Merriam-Webster defines it this way: nonconformity is behavior or thinking which is different from that of most people. You're deliberately unconventional. Even your choice of clothes is a statement of your nonconformity. This is exactly what feminists proclaim for women, so why is it not okay for men? Hypocrisy at the highest level, I would say, isn't it? Men are constantly told what their place and duty is in society by women and the government. As a Christian who has a MDiv in theology, I can tell you that the Bible doesn't tell men to become slaves to women or the government. People have used the Bible and even the words of the Apostle Paul to justify their evil institution of slavery. I realize the Apostle Paul didn't tell his slave friends to rebel and break off the yoke of oppression and admonish his slaves, since slavery was legal in Paul's day. Paul's purpose was to get people saved, and if people are saved, their hearts will turn from wickedness and free slaves and outlaw slavery and treat all people equally. If Paul had espoused and written or preached such harsh language against the state, he would have been considered a traitor and probably executed, and his ability to spread the word of God and the gospel of Christ would have been over for good. Besides, I am sure he was wise enough to know that preaching a social gospel akin to a civil rights movement like we had in the 20th century would have been futile. Any and every rebellion against Rome and Roman authority was crushed severely and very quickly. Such a militant type of Christianity would have never survived the first century. I believe that once you are an adult, it is your responsibility to take care of yourself, pay your own bills, taxes, etc. If you want to be married and have kids, that is your prerogative, but if you don't want to, then it's your business. As a MGTOW, you have the right to do what you want to do that makes you happy, not what your family, society, women, or what the government thinks you should be doing. So many traditionalists, especially church people, like to tell men and at times shame men into doing what they say is a man's responsibility. They say men are supposed to be protectors, they expect men to be there to help steady society. They also don't think a man is an adult until he is married and has kids. The kids are there to continue on the family line. Children are our future. Really? What future is that? A future where we all are good little automatons like robots or bees who function in an inhuman, uncaring society that uses people up until they burn out? Modern society is evil. Modern society is uncaring. Why do I say this? Modern society is based on the premise of the elites, the rich and powerful, run everything, and we are just a wage slave to them. It is a fact that the central bankers own all the major corporations in this nation and all nations. The Rothschild family own 95% of all banks and corporations in this nation, and they pay no taxes to the U.S. government. The Federal Reserve is not owned by the U.S. government, but is a private banking entity. Don't believe me? Look up and see who actually owns the bank and who are board members of the bank. The Rothschilds' name is at the top of the list along with the Rockefeller family. The Federal Reserve is not owned nor run by the U.S. government, since the Federal Reserve Act was forced through Congress in the middle of the night in 1913 by Woodrow Wilson and his flunkies. The Bank of the United States was the Federal Reserve predecessor before the central bankers got a foothold in the United States. Banks own all land on the continental U.S. except land that some indigenous Native American tribes were allowed via treaty to keep. They are called reservations. The people living on reservations do not pay taxes, but live in poverty since they can't get the basic services the rest of us expect, like running water and sewage, electricity, and basic internet and phone service. The only other exceptions are small groups of religious people like the Amish who have no modern conveniences, who also don't pay taxes, but they don't really contribute to the American consumerist system. These elitist bankers own the land and then parcel it out, and we have to pay off a mortgage, and the government makes us pay taxes supposedly for all the services we expect, like funding schools, roads, etc. Really? First of all, they stole all the land from the Native Americans and make the rest of us pay them through the nose to own a little bit of it. To be honest, many of the things the government funds is really not part of their job according to the Constitution. For example, the Constitution lays out the specific powers of each branch of the government. According to the Constitution, the states are the only entity that is supposed to regulate and pay for funding the public schools in the U.S., not the federal government. We have allowed the federal government to continue to bully and harass and intimidate and continue to place more rules and regulations upon us. I don't believe that the IRS is even a legitimate agency according to the U.S. Constitution. The IRS and the Federal Reserve both think they are above the law, and Congress has tried many times to try to audit the Federal Reserve, but again they can't audit the Federal Reserve because it is not owned by the U.S. government, it is a private bank. Our forefathers warned us about allowing private bankers to get this much power over individuals and the government. The Rothschilds and the Rockefeller families both have boasted that they don't care who rules from Washington or London because they will dictate policy to Washington and London, and they have. Money talks. And everyone knows all politicians are on the take, no matter who they are and what party they claim. So what does this have to do with MGTOW? A lot. Why should any MGTOW want to help this evil, diabolical system from Washington, D.C. that only views men as wage slaves and cattle? If you will notice lately, all the email leaks that show the attitude of not only Hillary Clinton but other politicians about how they have such a disdain for the average person. They consider us cattle, and that is all. And then you have callous, vile men like Bill Gates, Ted Turner, and Al Gore and others who say the world is overpopulated and they want to kill off most of us because we are hurting the planet. Really? And if you don't believe me, do your own research into this. You will find hundreds of articles of Gates and other rich elites saying the same thing. Also look up videos on YouTube of these men saying exactly this. Traditionalists, who in my opinion are just as bad as feminists, claim that society will collapse without families with both a husband and wife. I partly agree with their belief. I was reared by a godly, loving set of both parents who are still married to this day. If everyone was a loving Christian who loved others like themselves, I would totally agree with traditionalists that marriage is the ideal, but they are not espousing biblical marriage but modern marriage that has been usurped and run by the state. The government has no place in marriage, period. There should never ever be a legal document that both the man and woman have to sign. The marriage contract binds the two to the state and each other. The U.S. government does not have any right being involved in marriage. The U.S. Constitution does not give the state this right. This is a power the state has usurped for its own nefarious reasons. Why is marriage so important to the state? Well, that is simple: money. We all know that married people buy more stuff to live, and when they have kids they have future wage slaves. The government, through the Rockefeller Foundation and the CIA, funded Gloria Steinem during the 60s and early 70s to brainwash women into thinking they were being oppressed by the evil patriarchy and that they were not fulfilled staying at home rearing children. So women in droves went to work. This now allowed the government to steal money from men, but now women as well, through illegal taxes. It is not legal for them to tax personal income. There is no provision in the U.S. Constitution that allows any state or federal government entity to tax any person's personal income. They will lie and say it is legal, but that is only because the federal courts and the Supreme Court interprets the law to favor the politicians and the rich elites instead of the people. We don't even know where the money from our taxes go, do we? They say they go to fund schools, repair roads, etc. Really? If you look at the federal budget, you will see funds allocated that don't have any designation, and not to mention all the graft and corruption and waste of money. So where is this money going? To foreign governments, the Vatican, or black ops? Secret military projects? Who knows? And guess what, when people complain they just snidely reply, it's none of our business. Really? Who pays your salary, bud? I do. Talking about taxation without representation. Our forefathers would be rolling around in their graves if they knew what we let our government get away with. I expect our forefathers would have marched on DC long ago and dragged these crooked politicians out by the scruff of their necks and hung them from the highest gallows they could build, and would have started a new governmental system all over again. This is why I and most MGTOW are anti-statist. I'm not an anarchist, but I'm all for small government that goes strictly by the Constitution and whose power is reined in and accountable to the people. The federal government's power needs to be brought into check. Unfortunately, some state governments are emulating the overreach of the feds as well. Any person or persons who abuse their power should be held accountable and dealt with harshly. The jails need to be filled with such politicians. I like to refer to myself also as a nonconformist. The government is the main culprit, with the aid of PC culture and feminists and now traditionalists, in the pushing of conformity. The use of shaming tactics is used a lot on TV to try to convince men to go back to being good little wage slaves to the state and their proxy women. Traditionalists, especially those who claim to be Christians, are hypocrites and liars. If they really go strictly by traditional beliefs and those upheld by the Bible, you will find the state of the family would be quite different than today. The man is the head of the household in the Bible. Most so-called Christian women would have a coronary if they were told the truth about what the real dynamic in the family is supposed to be. The Apostle Paul tells women that they don't have the right to teach men or have authority over men, nor does he allow them to preach. Look around at all the churches today. More and more women are in the pulpit and are leading the church. This goes against God's will. And another thing, God hates divorce. Who initiates 75 to 80% of all divorces in America? Women. Why? Because of no-fault divorce. The laws benefit women and they benefit the state even more. The divorce courts and family courts are filled with vile, crooked lawyers and judges on the take. The state can basically bankrupt a man and keep him in servitude for life legally. They have passed laws that men who are not even the father of children that live with him for a particular period of time must still be required to pay child support until the child/children are 18. Can you imagine forcing a man to pay child support for a child that is not even his once the couple divorces? The ex-wife can claim spousal abuse without even any proof, and the husband will go to jail. I can go on and on about the abuses of the legal system by our government to subjugate good men. Our nation has much to answer for on Judgment Day. I don't believe a single politician in modern times will ever enter heaven. All will be burning in hellfire for all eternity. So to tell young men it is their obligation to support such an evil system is insane. I curse such people and hope they tremble in their boots as they stand before a holy and just God. He will ultimately have the last word to such wicked, selfish and vile people. I believe this nation has very little time left before God's judgment falls. I am not a prophet, but I believe because of the sins of the people and especially of the church in failing to teach God's word and the truth, destruction is soon to befall this nation. Civil War and World War III are just around the corner. Fire will fall from the skies on every major city of this nation, mark my words. I don't know when, but it is coming. It's just a matter of time. Some traditionalists have complained that MGTOW will bring down society. Really? Society is falling apart, but you can't blame it on MGTOW. Then you have some that say that the elites helped start MGTOW. I don't believe that. I believe they are passing unconstitutional laws and trying to pit men and women against each other. It's a technique that has been used for thousands of years. It's called divide and conquer. It will make it easier for them to set up their new world order or one world government when the time comes. It's harder for people to fight injustice without a healthy, stable family life in our nation. The idea is to turn marriage and family into what used to be a wonderful, nurturing relationship into a means to funnel money from people and make men slaves. The elites are devils who love manipulating people. They understand human nature and how if you give money incentives to one set of people over another, women over men, then their baser natures take over. This creates animosity and causes other men to flee from marriage and hate other females. It is only natural for us as humans to not like pain, so we avoid pain. In this case, young men will avoid relationships and marriage because of these unjust laws that our vile government has passed to take away men's rights and transfers men's wealth to women and the state. So you see, that is why so many MGTOW men are angry and spew hateful things about women. Many have been burned by women and the system and have good reason not to trust women. When women are allowed to abuse men legally, this breeds animosity and hate. I think once men who have been burned have passed the anger stage, they will calm down and be ready to go to the next level of self-awareness. Anger is part of a grieving process. All of us go through the stage of anger when we realize we have been given a raw deal and treated like scum. Do I hate women? No, I do not. I can't speak for other men. Many MGTOW are still stuck in the anger stage and haven't healed emotionally yet. This takes time. Everyone grieves at their own speedway and time. It is highly possible there are MGTOW men who hate women, but most do not. I am not responsible for others' feelings or actions, and neither are you. To paint a whole group of men or people in general as being misogynists because of one or two is disingenuous and outright defamation of character by these despicable people. Why is the media, the government, and feminists attacking MGTOW men? That is an easy answer: they are afraid of losing their power, influence, and money. When men wake up, say no, and realize their true strength and power, this terrifies the oppressors. This is when the enemy begin the shame language, calling men man boys, and men who have Peter Pan syndrome, who are living in their mom's basement playing video games. When they start to realize that shaming doesn't work, then they will probably find other ways to try to get money out of single men. In the past, single men were forced to pay a bachelor tax. Of course, we still have some of this still in effect now. Single people pay higher taxes because they don't have any deductions or dependents. There are always sneaking, dishonest, and conniving politicians who think of creative ways of stealing money from people. Then of course the feminists are always there with their hands out trying to get more money from men. Feminists use lobbyists to lobby Congress every chance they can to try to get the politicians to pass laws that benefit them financially, socially, and legally. I've stated all this to say that nonconformity is the answer to the oppression from the state. Don't be swayed by corporate commercialism by only what need. People who conform to the state and society are weak-minded and good little consumers. Yes, we need goods and services to survive, but don't be so materialistic that you have to have every little silly product or gadget on the market. Don't let corporate commercials sway you to buy every little piece of junk product that they try to sell you on TV. Most of the stuff they sell is from China and it is junk. All you're doing is making some corporate fat cat who probably doesn't even pay taxes richer. Try to buy American if you can. We need to keep more money in this country. Buy from local companies instead of corporate giants and big box stores owned by elitist scum who are globalists and hate America. Starve the beast of its money and you starve it of its power and influence. That is why so many MGTOW are not getting married and not having children. Besides, it costs money and lots of it to have a family. I have a hard time just paying my bills, let alone paying the bills of a family and a big house and all that entails. Children and marriage are supposed to be a blessing from God, and they used to be until the government started using marriage and the family as a weapon to enslave men. Our enemy is rich elitist bankers and their lackeys, the government, as well feminists who lobby the government to gain more legal rights and pass illegal legislation to take rights from men and to steal money from men to fill their own bloated pocketbooks. I see the Trump victory also as a victory for men. I believe much of the insane legislation feminists will try to push to remove more men's rights and try to steal from men will be blocked by common sense legislators and people in key positions who Trump will appoint. So am I putting all my faith in Donald Trump or conservatives? No, of course not. As a Christian, my faith is only in Christ Jesus. No man is good and just only God is. I just believe that most conservatives have a better record on human rights issues than liberals and leftists. As men, we must stand up to oppression from the state and say no. You can also say no in many different ways. I am beginning to see people standing up to leftist companies and groups by boycotting companies who have terrible human rights issues against men. Do not buy products by companies who mistreat men or people in general. Spread the word to others about who these companies are and their products so you can avoid them altogether. Two such companies are Kellogg's and Pepsi. I see reported online daily companies who have terrible human rights violations against men become aware and become a concerned citizen. Refusing to buy products from companies that violate people's basic rights will starve the beast. Thank you for listening and watching my video. I hope I have given you some insights into MGTOW and how MGTOWs can curb the power of the offending parties that are destroying and subjugating men. Men are the main people capable of standing up to tyranny, and that is why they want to take men's rights away. Society will fall under the power of the elites and their one-world government when men's rights are stripped from them. Who will stand up to Big Daddy government and the corporate fascists without men? Stay strong and brave, pray and be vigilant. Hope you have a wonderful day and God bless.